You've never seen it?
I've never seen it.
Oh, my.
Peeps, one and all. Before we get started on this week's episode, I would just like to give a brief thank you to everyone who not only checked out the short film. I know that was kind of dropped on everyone out of nowhere, but myself and all the pre-creative process that took, and then everyone else, including the actors, Lizzie Swanson and your own Tony over here, all worked very, very hard on that. Thank you for giving it the viewership that it has gotten. It's much appreciated. But even more so than that, holy fucking shit, thank you guys for turning out to the last episode.
It's crazy how fast it grew. That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's great.
No, and we got a few more subscribers from that, and the viewership has been absolutely insane. Thank you guys so much for watching that. And now, on to today's program.
So, Colin, this week on the list, we are stepping just back over the line into the 20th century once again. The year is 1999, and the top 10 highest grossing movies were stacked with absolute bangers and powerhouses. 1999 is a great year for movies.
Ironic, we just watched a movie from 1999.
Oh yeah,
last night.
Eyes Wide Shut, fucking insane. It was the last of that director's, the last thing that he made, and it was fucking great. Tom Cruise. Yeah. Fucking strange man in a strange movie. It's great. Of course, Star Wars Episode 1, the long-awaited return of a beloved franchise filled with adventure and tons of new special effects that everyone was super excited for.
Yes.
The Sixth Sense, critically acclaimed, psych thriller, M. Night Shyamalan. Makes sense. Two amazing, beloved, and some people would argue best animated features of all time in Toy Story 2 and Tarzan. And then The Matrix. Which is groundbreaking for its time.
Yes. You want to hear some bullshit? Him and I's not my first experience, but one of our early experiences of me watching a movie that I claimed to be dog shit for a long, long fucking time. And then rewatched it with him, and it just opened my eyes, being The Matrix, because I was an edgy little shithead. But we watched The Matrix. That was still one of my favorite viewing experiences of all time.
Yeah. Right down at the 10th highest grossing film of that year, you find something that feels totally out of place for all of that.
Okay.
Critics and audience hold the same, somewhat lukewarm opinion of this film overall, even though now it has a massive cult fan base, right? The people who like it really, really like it.
Yeah.
Colin, as you bust into this into today's film, do you have any guesses what it might be?
I don't know the medium. I don't know anything. I don't know if this is animated, live action, and with you, it could be all over the place.
It is the 10th most highest grossing film of 1999.
I don't know. I just removed that ribbon off camera unceremoniously. I'm sorry. Wrapping it with duct tape like a fucking G.
It's gonna be different tape every single time. I keep losing the clear tape.
Oh, great.
Show it.
So he's back in your walls, I see. Oh no, Austin Powers 2.
Yeah.
And The Spy Who Shagged Me.
Yes. Once again, directed by Jay Roach, written and starring Mike Myers, also starring Heather Graham this time around as the lady on the box. Featuring a lot of the same returning cast, a lot of the same returning members of staff. Michael York, known for starring in The Three Musketeers, Seth Green, mostly known for his voice acting roles on Robot Chicken, Family Guy, so that sort of stuff.
Co-creator of Robot Chicken on top of that.
Oh yeah. So Colin, first off, how do you feel very broadly about when you hear a movie is going to get a sequel? How do you feel about that sort of thing?
I think it all depends what kind of movie you're talking about, and what the intention of the sequel is. Who's making it? I guess it's very context sensitive for me. Say something like anytime I would hear back in the day the John Wick movies are getting a sequel. I'm fine with that because those movies have never been all that focused on telling this very important conclusive story, except for I would argue the last one, and they're planning on doing a sequel to that. No. But then say it's a very, very singular piece that tells its story, and by the end, once that story is told, it's done with and we can make it over. I feel the only time a sequel works is if the filmmaker, not a group of producers, not a group of corporate board heads, get this idea that they're like, I have a story to tell and it's with these characters that I love. Like, you could very easily take something like Clerks and have had that be just its own singular thing, but then we wouldn't have gotten Clerks 2 all those years later.
Yeah.
Which on its own face value,
Yeah.
that I believe that's your favorite Kevin Smith movie, if I remember correctly.
It's a toss-up between 2 and 3.
Yeah.
It's a toss-up.
There are lots of films, such as the sequel that we have had on here to my favorite film of all time, that is a perfect example of this corporate hack job.
I watched over the old episode, and
Yeah.
I think the first thing that you talked about is, I got a quote here, is there's a lot about this movie that I think is on the verge of brilliance, and then there's a lot about this movie that I think is exactly what I thought it would be,
Yeah.
and it's not the stuff that you may think. And I think you went into that.
I think out of the context of watching it with you and watching it to watch something on camera, I may enjoy the first movie on my own a bit more. I tend to be that way with comedies a lot, especially when they're being anticipated by someone like you, my friend that I care about, and it's a movie that they love a lot. So I may enjoy that more. I still think there are plenty of criticisms that I would still have, like the fact that for the most part, a majority of the movie is just shot like a standard studio comedy from the time. I think I've brought this up with you after we watched Austin Powers. I went back and I rewatched a lot of the Peter Sellers Pink Panther movies.
Yeah.
And those movies have a style to them, even when they're cheap. Shot in the Dark, I think, has probably one of the best opening 15 minutes of a comedy movie ever made, and Peter Sellers isn't even on fucking camera for that shit. So for me, like, my big kind of overall problem with this is I had some problem with inconsistency of characterization in screenplay, which may seem like a stupid thing to complain about in a comedy, but to me it's like these films are all about characterization.
Yeah.
So the idea of me complaining about that makes sense to me. And then on top of that, the style in the opening 5 to 10 minutes, where it's all in the 60s, disappears from the rest of the movie. And what has made me a little excited about this, and what made me the most interested in this even before I watched this movie, is I know this is a period piece.
Oh yeah, it takes place at least half of the movie takes place in the 60s. So.
And for me, if the movie then adopts the filmmaking style of making that the consistent feel.
Yeah, that there at least be that to hold you over
Yeah,
the time.
no, and because to me it's like a lot of people I know have this whole thing to where it's like style over substance is always bad, and I'm like, no, I agree, but to have a movie that is all substance and no style, I think is also a bit of a problem. Like, show a bit of your flair to it, which is what I generally think it was lacking.
Yeah, we will head off and break into the next Austin Powers film, so why don't you all just sit here, behave. We will be right back.
Years ago, a battle was fought and an empire was destroyed. Now, the saga will continue.
You were expecting someone else?
If you see only one movie this summer, see Star Wars. But if you see 2 movies, see Austin Powers.
That's right, Mr. Bigglesworth. We're back. Oh, behave.
The Spy Who Shagged Me.
No, Mr. Bigglesworth. No, bad catch. Dr. Evil does not like to be pee-peed on.
All right. So, Colin, first things first, can you help me just quickly wrap up the plot of Austin Powers 2? Would you mind doing that for me?
Austin Powers, The Spy Who Shagged Me, is basically the Avengers Endgame of good movies.
Don't say that. That's not true. That isn't the plot of the movie.
Cool.
Well, it involves time travel, so it's the same thing. Austin Powers 2 revolves around Dr. Evil building his laser on his Death Star in the past. But to accomplish all of this, he needs to take fucking Austin Powers' mojo from him being frozen in the past take it himself so he can get Riz.
I've been really trying, baby, trying to hold back this feeling.
And then take over the world. But Austin Powers goes back, meets a lady. They have spunky good time. And that's the movie. Inherently, I don't know if you've noticed, this film is not exactly focused on being too plot-oriented.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, no, it's Austin Powers needs to defeat Dr. Evil by going back in time.
Yeah. And you know what? Here to say this up front, nothing wrong with that.
How are your feelings about this movie overall, and did any of your hopes and dreams come true as far as like predictions and stuff like that?
As far as wish fulfillment, I would say what I wanted out of this movie was very much granted. I can say, especially compared to the last one, I feel like most of my problems were actually fixed in this. And what I would have wanted out of this as a concept is far surpassing the first one and the second one. I can say for sure, I actually really liked, maybe loved this movie.
I'm going back and forth on it, right?
Yeah.
Because watching this movie for like the third or fourth time, I watched it once when I got this big set. I watched them all in a big fucking marathon, and so it kind of like blurred everything together, and that's not helpful. I ended up watching the first one several times before we made the episode, and I've watched this one several times since then. And maybe it's just that the parts about this movie that grate on me, I've now graded me over and over again. And I'm seeing things like being a little more cynical about it. I don't like it more than the first movie. I don't think I like the first movie more either. I think it's very nebulous, like they hold the same sort of space for me.
Okay.
There's things about the first movie that I think allow it to get away with a lot with me. If you have like a cool success story, if you have like a cool like sort of people coming together very posthumously and like very like serendipitously and making something, that makes me like your movie a lot more and gives me like the room to say, no, it's cool that all these things worked out together, like a bunch of people from SNL and somebody who's the husband of the wife of fucking whoever, who made the music video for the original for the original Austin Powers like song. Like they all just came together and they made this fucking movie, and that's really cool, and that earns it a lot of bonus points for me. The second movie, for me, the first 20-30 minutes, it hits you with bangers after bangers after bangers when they like really just sink into stuff like that, right? The Jerry Springer bit is very, very funny.
No one talks to my son like that. It's okay, Spike. You motherfucker!
And towards the middle, I kind of like they lose me a little bit.
Okay.
The second act is a lot of like, since this movie, the plot is not very important and like not particularly like big, when they spend like 10 minutes working towards a plot and there's like no gags, no gaffes, and it's like whatever, they're just poking fun at like past things or whatever, it kind of just falls flat for me. A lot of the cast is from the first movie, so a lot of the cast is doing a good job, great job even, I'd say, like, because they've done these roles before, they know these characters, they know what people like out of these characters, now they've like amped those things up a little more, and it's like, that's nice, that's good. The female lead did well, and you know, she did all right, but since there's this whole thing of like, I don't really care about the plot of this movie, whenever it's like her job, it feels like it's a lot of the motion for the plot falls on her.
Listen, Felicity, I don't want you getting too close to Austin. It's not meant to be.
I don't get too close to anybody, Basil. My interest in this case is purely professional.
Good. Then you won't mind tracking down Fat Bastard tonight.
No problem.
And as a result, I kind of don't care about a lot of the scenes that she's in, which sucks. because the early scenes that she's in are great. When she comes into fucking American Woman on the fucking the red, white, and blue car, just fucking like, yeah, no. When she's just cool, she's cool, and I like her.
Yeah.
And when she's like playing into the fucking gags, that's really cool, and I like it. But then I don't really have any idea of who she is as a person after that.
Okay.
You know?
Austin Powers, I presume.
Powers by name, powers by reputation.
Felicity Shagwell, CIA. Shagwell by name, shag very well by reputation.
Oh, behave.
And I guess this is where I will have the inverse opinion of you. So we'll start out with your whole opinion on you saying, like, I like a success story and that will influence my opinion on the movie. And this is where you and I fall on entirely different sides of the spectrum. A success story is cool, but when you look at the reality of the end product, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And it very clearly works for a lot of people. A lot of Austin Powers, regardless of its success story, I'm referring to International Man of Mystery specifically, does not work for me. Its plot is there and more focused on, but it's really dull. His love interest in the first movie does not work for me, because the entire plot hinges on you believing that she's slowly falling in love with this guy and willing to somehow change his entire life philosophy, which at the end of the first review, I remember I stated, if your whole character is based off of him being a swinger and you being like, there aren't more swingers in modern movies and everything. And then your whole like thing in the film is then to have him be like, yeah, but he's monogamous now.
Isn't it ironic that the very things that you stand for, free love, swinging, parties, are all now in the 90s considered to be evil?
No, man, what we swingers were rebelling against is uptight squares like you, whose bag was money and world domination. We were innocent, man. If we'd known the consequences of our sexual liberation, we would have done things differently, but the spirit would have remained the same. It's freedom, baby, yeah.
That kind of spits in the face of your whole core conceit for the sake of trying to make something more mainstream that's going to be accepted. And for me, where I think this movie swings right is, there isn't as much of like a focus on plot. And normally that may probably bother me, but where it works for me here is you say her character's not as built out. I would say her character's as built out as Austin, because what we're watching here are two people that are kind of exactly alike.
Yeah.
They're mirror images of each other. So as a result, they just work together. And whereas a lot of the weird consent stuff in the last one bothered me between him and this lead actress, it doesn't bother me here because she wants him. She wants him a lot.
Yeah, that is true.
That's better.
Crikey.
And as a result, you end up getting this relationship that feels like a lot more co-interested, but where I guess the closest thing you have to a theme in this is Austin is really depressed and feels like a loser because he's had this physical embodiment of what he views as his confidence stolen from him. Which is all in his head at the end of the day. It's a stupid comedy thing that ends up becoming an internal thing that they're able to externalize.
It is the very bare bones what you need to have this be like a movie, I guess.
Yeah.
It's like, it really falls into the same place that like the first one did, although I think it is more aggressive here in that it feels like a bunch of very good and then some very sloppy like SNL skits. It like, especially in the middle where they're like, in Dr. Evil's lair especially, when there's all this padding and this time that needs to play out where it kind of just like things happening. I could see that being fun, like once a week tuning in and seeing that like hoo ha ha, between like news segments or whatever. That could be fun. It's like the movie parts of the movie happen mostly at the beginning and the end. And then there's a lot of like basically padding, and where that is like you can get away with if it's like very funny jokes after just very funny jokes and whatever, if you just keep hitting it out of the park. But for me, I feel like it all landed in the beginning and like towards the end.
I understand what you're saying, but for me, the first film was overtly asking it to take it, or asking me as an audience member to take it seriously. Well, from this movie's opening scene with Austin and the former movie's previous love interest turning out to be a robot, I am immediately sent the signal, oh no, this movie's like really dumb.
You're a fembot!
No shit, Sherlock.
Machine gun jubblies? How did I miss those, baby?
Perhaps next time you should try foreplay.
And it knows exactly how dumb it is,
Yeah.
and it's going to have fun with it.
Yeah.
So while I'm not going to sit here and give the excuse of like, it's a dumb comedy, I give it like sort of the leeway. I'm not thinking as much while watching it, what are the intricacies of this movie's plot? Now, while I said, I think there is some thematic going at it here, what doesn't like strike me as, I guess, really falsely insincere as the first one did, is the fact that the two people who are, you know, quote unquote falling in love, and it's falling in love in the sense of like the way swingers fell in love with this, which is the whole free love identity. And while that adds this whole element to where you could say like, oh, there's not as much for these two people to grow together, to me it adds this beneficial element to where you don't have to put in as much legwork for these two to like work together. And on top of that, Austin not having his mojo and not having his confidence, even though he continues to have it throughout the movie, and that contradiction is kind of rectified by the end by saying you never had lost your mojo to begin with, you still had it. It makes it so much easier to use Austin as a punching bag.
It's a bit nutty.
Which I feel like was something that the first movie was missing. Which is the big joke being, Austin's kind of an idiot and kind of a huge dork. And that's a part of his charm, but the movie felt like it was playing so much like, no, Austin is traditionally sexy.
Allow myself to introduce myself.
Being able to use Austin as a punching bag then kind of brings this whole idea that like, okay, so we can make fun of Austin now. Austin is something that is no longer this like sacred cow that we have to hold up on a pedestal like in the first movie. So you get a lot of him more so making a fool of himself, where the movie feels like it's more so aware of it and the characters are also aware of it. And that actually kind of brings me to like my one big problem with the movie, and I know it's your kind of huge problem. I think this movie's sincere biggest problem with its humor is a problem a lot of comedies have, which is punch up, continuously punch up. Austin's your big lead character, make fun of him. Have all the other characters make fun of him. Two key elements of this movie, being Fat Bastard and Mini-Me, are all punching down.
Sexy man, eating like a sexy man can.
Mini-Me has some gags that I think work really well, and it's all when it has nothing much to do with like his size.
Judo flip!
And it's one of those things where it's like, I do not have any kind of medical condition like little people, and I am a bit bigger, but I'm not like Fat Bastard size, right? So these things, like, and like me commenting on these things don't come from like a personal place. I am not sitting here personally being offended by these things, but it's just really lazy. And it's just super low-hanging fruit, which could be fine, but as you were saying, you know, when you have a lot of this stuff in Dr. Evil's lair, forming around these jokes for extended periods of time, it becomes very tedious.
And the fucked up part is like a lot of these jokes to do with like Fat Bastard and Mini-Me are the jokes. The people, you say Austin Powers, and they don't think about movie one, they don't think about Goldmember, they just think about those fucking jokes from that fucking time frame. For like a decade after this movie came out, people would be insufferable about get in my belly.
I'm bigger than you, I'm higher in the food chain. Get in my belly! Come on! You're lucky, wee man! Ah!
And that's part of why I think this movie succeeded so heavily, is it had tons of little sound bites. People would go see the movie, they would come out and they would have the fucking get in my belly, and their friends would say, what the fuck are you talking about? And they say, come see Austin Powers with me. This movie made, I think, 10 times or about 10 times of its budget back in just the box office. So it crushed. It did very, very well for itself.
$1 million.
It gets into very quickly music hour, Tony's music hour. Tony's music hour.
Wow! Woo! Behave!
It's a lot of needle drops. It's just fucking songs that they had money to get, you know.
So was the first one.
Yeah, they had a couple like that they made for the movie, but then they reused those ones, and then they just had money to get like new shit, like stuff like Madonna, The Who, R.E.M., Green Day's in here for fucking some reason, and it's, you know, it's whatever, and that's just kind of like part of the problem, I think, is that it knows exactly what it wants to do, and that is be a sequel to the first movie and just make a fuckload of money. That feels like where a lot of this comes from. The first movie, it felt like they were genuinely, or at least most everyone at the higher levels were like really genuinely trying to make something funny and good and like a really great fucking thing. It succeeded, and now it's moving towards product, which I'm not a big fan of.
I disagree. I think the first film, with its predisposition towards doing this whole, making a movie about a swinger thing, but it's a swinger who becomes a monogamous dude, inherently is more corporate. When you make a movie that is about counterculture becoming more, I guess, in line with modern culture, in a specifically, the 90s weren't a conservative period of time, but we were entering in this like 9/11 era that was about to be happening, to where things got very, very conservative, very, very fast. And I don't know. To me, it's like this movie's inherent, you could say it's regressing because we're putting Austin back to square one, but that square one is sort of this, I guess, more left-leaning ideology. And to me, you could call that corporate, but I look at this and I say, at least, like, I find it a bit more entertaining. I don't find myself getting uncomfortable nearly as often by our lead, which is kind of the big thing that I didn't like about the first one. And maybe these people involved in the first one were a bit more enthusiastic about what they were making. But I had more fun with this.
I think it really comes down to the first one tried to do something and it ended up being like sort of shitty and corporate. And then this one said, oh, if we're gonna be shitty and corporate, we'll just, have fun with it. And that's kind of the divide.
But it feels less shitty and corporate to me than the first one.
Man, yeah, I guess so. I mean,
like, purely from like a thematic like element. And granted, I have met no one who has agreed with me on the ending of the first one. That stance that I hold about it. And that's like completely fine. But also the people I've talked about this with that have disagreed with me on that also grew up with this. I've never seen these fucking movies.
Yeah.
So maybe some level of like freshness with my eyes being like...
Maybe you're seeing some shit that other people don't see.
Yeah, so I don't know. I don't know. And I take all of your criticisms very seriously, and I understand where you're coming from, but also like, this is just my perspective on the whole thing.
Are there any like sequels that are on your mind, prepared you for like, we're gonna talk about like how this like compares to other sequels that have come out. Are there any that just come to mind to you, like that you would compare positively, negatively to like how this does as a sequel, I guess?
Weirdly enough, it's another Mike Myers movie that we saw in theaters a couple months ago, Shrek 2.
Yeah.
So we watched the first Shrek movie, which I do have a nostalgic connection to, as I'm sure a lot of other people watching this show do. Shrek is an enduring classic, and it is a movie that a lot of people know about, but on our rewatch, I was like, no, I enjoy this, and it's really funny, but it wasn't anything special. I was kind of lukewarm. I'm like, a lot of the stuff that is special was special because of the time period it was coming out in. You know, it was kind of punk in essence to kind of go against the grain of Disney, but now a lot of the jokes in that come off as pretty try-hard.
Yeah.
And while the second movie does a lot of like self-reflection stuff that the first movie already did, it's telling a lot more of a sincere story while keeping a lot of that humor from the first movie done in there. And I think the second one, as a result, is a lot better. And I see a lot of that second one in this.
Exactly. I was about to say, like, as far as you're saying, your feelings about this movie, about Austin Powers 2, that's exactly mirrored, in my opinion, of like Shrek and Shrek 2, in that the first one, it sets up a lot of stuff, and it sets up, like, you know, it's great for the time and it's whatever, and maybe like a little less fucking popular in times going by, but it's the second one that really like hits hard, and it's like, that's what you hope for. DreamWorks kind of does that a lot. They just posthumously, like, they end up with like sequels that are just so much better than like their originals. Like,
I would say did that a lot.
Yeah, did that a lot.
Yeah.
Like How to Train Your Dragons. I think the second one, people will agree, or at least from like what I remember, is that the second one was like really, really good. But then moreover, like Shrek and Shrek 2, Kung Fu Panda and Kung Fu Panda 2. Everyone says that Kung Fu Panda 2 is like a great movie, like full stop, like blows the first one out of the water. And it's odd that you haven't seen that one yet.
I've seen Kung Fu Panda 2, I don't really, I don't have any memories or opinions on it. DreamWorks movies, specifically like of that era, are just kind of cleaned from my head. It was right towards the era where animation was feeling like it was too young for me. And I needed to like mature and get older, so a lot of stuff that came out in that era was either like I didn't watch it, or if I did watch it, it was like I watched it on Redbox. I stopped watching them in theaters a lot. That was kind of a big thing.
And I think Shrek, and moreover Shrek 2, proves that like Mike Myers is not at all like a hack, like some people might want to poke fun at him now.
I remember I thought that in high school with like zero basis, but it's like you have this this movie, which like I said, I enjoy more than the first one. Obviously, I've shown you Wayne's World, which I up front. It's weird. I think I would put this second movie on tier with Wayne's World. I enjoyed it a lot more, and like I said, kind of like we'll get into more specific stuff, but just to kind of like teeter on it, it's like this movie's filmmaking, I think, blows the first one out of the fucking water.
Yeah. He got brought on for Shrek originally because the original voice actor died.
Which I had only told you on the way over here in the car.
That's crazy.
Yeah, Chris Farley.
Now come on, what do you want?
I don't have time to set it to music.
Oh, this is another one of those onion things.
No, this is one of those drop it and leave me alone things.
Well, why don't you want to talk about it?
Why do you want to talk about it?
Well, why are you answering the question with a question?
Why are you asking questions I don't want to answer?
Why are you blocking?
I'm not blocking.
Then why do you have problems expressing your wants?
I don't. I want you to shut up. See? No problem.
You're just displacing your anger.
Believe me, it's properly placed.
You're really mad at whoever did this to you.
No one did anything to me.
Yes. Someone hurt you so bad. Someone hurt you many years ago.
Leave my parents out of this.
Breakthrough. Let's go with that. Let's explore family origin. Were you hugged as a child, Shrek?
All right. I want a home. And someone to share it with. Okay?
Yes, Shrek. It's okay.
Now that he's got this character, they bring him on for 2, and he's fucking great.
Yeah.
He feels exactly like that character. He feels like the best version of fat bastard that could ever have fucking been.
Let's not insult Shrek like that.
Let's be clear. He just took the voice and made it better.
Yeah, he just did his offensively stereotypical fucking Scottish accent and just like made it a little more of a human being.
You get the motor, you keep your money, and I'll get your baby.
And then you got sequels that don't even really need to be like based on the original, I guess. That's fine too. Some examples that I think of a lot, that are actually, Colin's shown them to me fairly recently. A Few Dollars More comes to mind, where these characters, they're kind of the same character, played by the same actor. And they tell a whole totally different story in a different fucking time and whatever.
Yeah.
Like, where fucking, what is it? What's the first one?
Fistful of Dollars.
Fistful of Dollars.
Also known as Yo Jimbo.
Yeah. And then, of course, there's stuff like Valley of the Dolls 2, which
Beyond the Valley of the Dolls.
Is it Beyond the Valley of the Dolls?
Yeah.
That one feels like a vastly different, like, worlds apart from its original.
The opening little text even clarifies that this is not a sequel to the first one, and it's Roger Ebert's best thing he's ever written. You can quote me on that.
I think it's really interesting to do the whole, like, Fistful of Dollars, Good, Bad, the Ugly, where it's like you take this actor as famous for playing, like, you know, a Clint Eastwood or a Lee Van Cleef. And I thought it would be kind of cool if Austin Powers took that sort of role, like being the character of Austin Powers in like a movie that maybe doesn't need to have all the connections to the original one.
And I would agree on that. And I mean, that's what James Bond is, which is what Austin Powers is primarily based off of.
Yeah.
James Bond, especially pre-Daniel Craig, which tries to like connect like things a little more. Like the first James Bond movie that Daniel Craig was in, Casino Royale, which gets a little shout out in this movie through a piece of signage. That movie essentially tries to be the James Bond origin story. And it's really good. And a lot of those Daniel Craig movies that I have seen, which are some of the only James Bond movies I've actually seen, are very good. But trying to take this character and make them this like chronological, here is how this guy came to be, it doesn't really work all that great. And I would agree with you. I think while I enjoy all the time travel stuff in this movie, and I find a lot of it to be really fun, they could have just as easily had this be a prequel and just have it take place in the 60s, and this is just the further adventures of Austin Powers at this period in time. But that being said, like I said, I think that opening sequence is fucking brilliant in a tone-setting place for the movie, and I think ups the ante of ridiculousness tenfold from that first movie with the whole gag of covering up people's like dick and balls. Although I do think it's hilarious how they had to go to the effort to censor out between text because it wouldn't completely cover up.
They were like, oh fuck, this ain't gonna work.
Yeah.
They're not gonna let us do this.
No, but it's I think that whole opening montage is just fucking brilliant, from visual gags, setup, like I said, a filmmaking perspective. So many individual little shot setups that you just had to get perfectly right with a bunch of in-camera work, and it's all fucking great. I love it.
No, I just thought like it'd be cool to do like it would provide the freedom to be like, here's maybe a 1960s swinger Austin Powers type meets up with a 1990s maybe like GoldenEye era fucking Bond type, and they fucking and they have to go on a mission together, and that fucking provides like tension.
Yeah.
And then it ends in like a buddy cop moment or however you want to end.
Yeah, you could just do Lethal Weapon with Austin Powers and James Bond.
I had a fucking fever dream the other night. Fucking the fever dream is a spiritual successor / parody to Face Off, starring Mike Myers and Keanu Reeves.
Mike Myers and Keanu Reeves, that would be great. Mike Myers and Tom Cruise.
Oh, fuck.
Yeah, baby.
I think like the last main type of sequel that you can be is a very unfortunate one. It's one that Colin's shown to me for the list. We all know it. We all fucking hate it. Staying Alive.
I don't hate it. It's just you hate it.
I fucking despise that movie.
I know. Rich Evans, please describe the plot of Staying Alive.
Tony Manero realizes that being a cunt is awesome.
You know what? That's fine. That's fine. As much as it's a movie that I think is very bad, and it's an awful sequel to a movie that I like, it is so not worth the effort of getting angry over. There are certain things, and I did raise my voice a bit in that episode. Not nearly as much as this guy, but...
Cut to me fucking drunkenly tossing the fucking diet right around.
Yeah.
Let's skip straight to the fucking product placement, to the money. We're gonna make it as broad as we can get it, so we can get as many people in as we can, and we're gonna sell the American dream and and what we think you should be like, the man. This is what a man would do. This is what, fucking God, it's just the music. Obviously, there's the whole angle of like heavy product placement in both of them. Like fucking, they both do that. It's just kind of like a sign of the times as things move forward.
Well, that's where I see things just a little differently. Contract or no, I will not bow to any sponsor.
Yeah, and I could get angry about it, but it is what it is. This is not one of those movies that, like, I'm not trying to disparage Austin Powers or its legitimacy as cinema. This is more cinema than most modern Marvel movies is. It's shot on film.
Yeah.
And, like, if we're being the Martin Scorsese technical, like, Quentin Tarantino definition, it's shot on film. It has a lot of stuff in it. Like, a lot of it's done practically, although I will get into criticism. Like, a lot of this movie, if they had committed as much as they commit sometimes with the rear screen projection, shooting on grainier film stock, having a lot of stock footage used for some driving sequences, you know, the whole, you know, cheeky joke of acknowledging this looks like LA even though we're in London, little bits of like the fucking London phone booth in the middle of the LA desert. I really do get taken out of it when a lot of this stuff has the effort into like kind of being this old school kind of filmmaking, but then out of nowhere it's like, hey, CGI volcano that looks like shit. They could have made a shitty looking model and that would have been
infinitely more fun.
Yeah, no, and it probably wouldn't have been nearly as expensive because this is 90s CGI.
Oh yeah. The most fucking interesting thing about like Staying Alive versus Austin Powers 2, I think, is like the differences in outcome for the two.
Yeah.
Saturday Night Fever came out. It was financial success regarding, regardless of its like critical review. It cost like $3.5 million to make, and it made back like over $200 million in the box office. So it made shit, right?
Yeah.
It was a big fucking movie. It makes sense in that way that eventually they would make a sequel. Its sequel, deservedly so, got critically shit-canned and as a pointless cash grab, right?
But it did make money.
It did make money.
That's the important part. This movie not only made money, this movie's got fans.
Yeah.
Staying Alive is like a mom's wet dream. I know so many older women that when I've brought this up love that fucking movie for one of two reasons. Fun dance movie that's like Dirty Dancing or fucking Flashdance, but like somehow even dumber, and John Travolta's fucking oil-covered abs.
Oh yeah. It didn't make like the astronomical levels of fucking profit that the first one did.
Because the first one was less expensive. The first one was shot for fucking nothing. So when you put more money into it,
it's not like you're guaranteed to get the money back. So they probably just went, well, fuck, I guess no one wants to see another one. Whatever, we're done. Goodbye, guys. See John Travolta in fucking 20 years.
No, he was in stuff like Guess Who's Talking, which is a movie about a baby who can talk. Which was what he was most known for pre-being cast in Pulp Fiction, and why none of the fucking producers wanted to like actually cast him. And Tarantino's like, watch him and Brian De Palma's fucking Blowout.
Brian De Palma's Blowout. I think it's one of the greatest movies ever made. It's Brian De Palma's finest film. All right, which means it's one of the finest movies ever made because, as we all know, Brian De Palma is the greatest director of his generation. All right, John Travolta, by the way, gets one of the best performances of all time in this movie. Okay, so now, from the drama section.
In contrast, Austin Powers 1 came out. It did fine. It did good. It made its money back. It made more than its money back. But clearly, it had an audience that was raving for it. The people who really liked it were like very, very big fans, and it got decent critical reviews. It got decent general reviews, and so they went on to make another one. Austin Powers 2 comes out. It gets like middling reviews from the general public and also from critics. But the same core fan base that really, really likes this movie really fucking likes it. This movie has tons of little sound bites, insert any of them here, and that is what they use to convince people to come in and see the fucking movie with them. It becomes like a cultural thing, it's huge, and so of course, like through just like word of mouth and through the fact that it is a sequel to a movie that people are willing to see, it makes sense that somehow, by some fucking miracle, this movie is the 10th highest grossing film of 1999.
I think that just speaks to the fucking selling powers of who Mike Myers was at that point in time. Like, it's the success of the first movie, but Mike Myers was also at the top of his game, which, as you said with Goldmember, it's like, oh, that movie quote-unquote killed his career. And for a time, it kind of did. As far as his career, as what his height was in the 90s, you can kind of only go downhill from this and Shrek.
Yeah.
Like, which is why I think the third movie, maybe, for me at least, from my perspective, it seems like the third movie, without having watched it yet, it seems like the shtick was just kind of getting old, is what it really comes down to.
Yeah, the point is like, these are pre-9/11 movies in a very post-9/11 fucking world. And Goldmember,
This came out in 99, so...
Yeah, it came out in 99. And then Goldmember comes out in 2002.
Yeah.
Not very long after the fucking tragedy. And long enough for us to see some of the results of, you know, horrible fucking wars over in the Middle East and shit. And people are just not in the mood for that movie. It's out of its element now. And so it kind of fucking, it didn't eat shit. It still made like its budget back. It still made like, I think 3 times its budget back.
Yeah.
But like, it was very clear at that point that they're like, all right, Austin Powers, no more of those. Goodbye. See ya, folks. As soon as these trilogies stop making as much money as the first one made, they
and what's ironic about that is you're about to enter like the era of trilogies. The early 2000s was the capitalization era of Harry Potter had just come out, so fantasy movies were getting big, the Star Wars prequels were coming out, and those were going to come out no matter what, because those were being funded by George Lucas's pocketbook, and Lord of the Rings just came out in 2001. So we're heightening up on this, and now every studio is trying to mount themselves with what is the next big thing we can make into a trilogy. What IP, what book do we have access to that we can adapt all this kind of shit? And it set this precedent and trend for what Hollywood is entirely made up with now. Which is, hey, you may not like Austin Powers 2. You may be like me and not even really like Austin Powers 1 that much. But you know what? Even if it is parody and derivative of other things, it's an original idea.
It is.
So to then move on with this and then instead replace all of these original ideas, even something like Wayne's World that is based off of an SNL sketch, and to simply move into this entire idea of IP-driven cinema.
Yeah.
Even when something's based off of like a book now, like Martin Scorsese's Killers of the Flower Moon, or it's based off of real events, it still is a film that is trying to say something. The fucking shithole we're in now, where all of these Marvel movies are bomb after bomb after bomb, and then you get something like Deadpool and Wolverine, which just crossed $1 billion a few days ago as of filming this. It's like, we're going to be trapped in this for a while, as long as every once in a while you get in
as
those
long
$1 billion fucking checks.
As long as the lightning bottling machine occasionally bottles lightning and doesn't kill a staff member, you know, they'll keep fucking running the machine.
Yeah.
We designed him and all your memories to help feed our machine. And with that, any last little bits, any last little pieces, any last little thoughts about
I just kind of want to wrap up and say I like this a lot. And, well, you know, it does, you know, once again, put a further rift in our friendship that will eventually tear us apart and make us not friends anymore.
Fucking dare you.
Yeah.
The original was unequal. Completely unequal.
I do just want to, I like it a lot more than the first one.
I'm glad you like it.
Just to kind of go over it all, it's like, the set design, you know, it's obviously shot on a set, but it is hearkening back to this era of movies that I've gone over in this. It's like the 50s through the 70s, and also like the 90s. This is my chunk of time that I love. And it's like what kind of in my head when I think of like, this is cinema, this is kind of what I think of. So to have this movie that like commits a lot of the time to harken back to this, while also being this 90s movie that is this fucking just very stupid, on the nose, overt comedy that's taking inspiration from people like Mel Brooks and a lot of just Saturday Night Live humor in general. There's some stuff that doesn't work in it. You know, you got, like I said, Fat Bastard, Mini-Me at points, I think is a bit much. I still do think this movie overall is a lot more accustomed to what I like about films. And on top of that, like I said, this just made me laugh more. And I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just a mood I'm in. Maybe this just like caught me on a better day. And maybe I will rewatch the first one and like it a lot more. I laughed a lot more and had a much better time. And there are certain just visual things that catch me off guard. Cut to shot of man falling in lava after seeing tits.
What do you think of these, my man?
Oh, me.
I'm glad, Colin. I'm glad that you like this. I'm glad that we can talk about it and like argue it out a little bit about who likes what, who doesn't like what. That's the point of the show. And I would like to say thank you so much for coming with me through this fucking this stopping point in the trilogy. This may or may not be the last time we see Austin Powers on this show. Who knows? Don't hold your breath, but you know, we'll see. For right now, though, go watch Sad Clown. We put so much fucking effort into it.
Please do.
Please do not watch episode 4 of The List, Austin Powers International Man Mystery.
Watch Sad Clown, followed up by another marathon episode of Austin Powers. Put that on once a day for a week.
Please, God, do not watch anything else.
All 36 of our subscribers.
Do not,
please.
Do not watch episode 4.
And make this the most viewed episode following up.
I beg you. Fucking please.
All right, everyone. Next time on the list.
See y'all next time.
See what that is next time.